Well, hello. Good to see you all here today. My question for you all is, have you thought about bread or bullets? I think there's quite a few people who have not pondered the wonderful, powerful, incredible nature of bread. Chelsea blew my mind the other day when she shared with me that bread itself can actually be your armor. I had no idea about this because we didn't know anything about barley. Do you guys know about barley? Hold on, I brought barley. Where'd I hide it? Barley, y'all. Tiny little bag of barley. This is what I love to smuggle around the nation. Barley seeds. Yes! Barley berries. Get this. If you haven't read the story of Yeshua feeding lots and lots of humans, he does it with bread. Fish, granted, yes, as well. But 5 barley loaves, 2 small fish, and 1 child with an oodles of a good mom at home baking some delicious loaves of barley bread. Which, pause for a second. Barley bread, turns out, like loaves of barley bread, is actually really hard to make. Chelsea's been trying to find a way to make barley bread rise nicely, and it's difficult. Barley's kind of drier, but we've learned it's greater for like the pastries and the, all those delicious brownies and muffins and, my favorite thing on the world, biscuits, barley biscuits, delicious. But barley is chocked full of something called beta-glucan, which is radioprotective. Yeah, it blocks radiation. And if you didn't know it, you're literally drowning in a world of electromagnetic radiation all the time. I put a post out the other day on The Invisible Rainbow, which is a phenomenal book which addresses much of the electromagnetic dragons that surround us all and how they literally poison our bodies, poison creation, and destroy mankind's life. But the good news is we got linen and we have barley. Barley's been doing heavy lifting for us. If only we would freshly mill it and eat it, it'll protect and insulate our bodies from the mass exposure of radiation. So if you live in a neighborhood where there's like 20 or 40 cell phone signals and constant Wi-Fi barraging your soul, eat barley and you're going to be all right. Pray to the Father and he'll totally deliver you in many ways. But you check this out. I just learned something the other day because I've been studying archaeology. Did you guys know the Bible is like a history book? Like, for real. It's not just some kind of thing out there that, sits on our shelves. Like, if you go over to the Middle East, the Far East, to many of us, if you go over there and you walk the land, you know what's amazing? You can dig up dirt and you can find stones of testimony literally hiding underneath your feet. So much so that they just stop digging a lot of times after they find the coolest stuff ever because it might just give away the fact that the Bible's a true story. So a lot of times they'll start digging and find incredible treasures that are so jaw-droppingly epic and accurate to the scriptures that the people that paid for those excavations to take place suddenly pull funding and stop digging in those places. Like, here's an example. The oldest inscriptions that we have of the name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, Yahweh, the oldest inscriptions we have are on a list of the enemies of the kings of Egypt. And it literally talks about the Nomads of Yahweh. How epic is that? That's literally what's inscribed in the deserts, I believe in the Sudan that they found this. It says the Nomads of Yahweh. What an epic description of the Israelite and the Hebrew people. Because, they didn't have a nation. This is before the Exodus. Like, what are you going to call these people? What are you going to call those wandering gypsies out there in the woods who are worshiping this other strange Elohim? They didn't have like a national identity. They were just people that regarded Yahweh and his instructions, his words, his commandments, the love that he had for them and his people and his creation as precious and as valuable. And they didn't operate under a pantheistic or polytheistic model. And because of that, they were strange. They were set apart. They were the outcasts in a lot of ways. And that's really what Chelsea and I are in our lives now. And there's a lot of people, though, that are also a part of this group that have become that in their families, in their friends, and in their communities. Even if you're still living in the neighborhood, you emotionally, mentally, and physically and psychologically have separated yourself out of that system. And that's a lot of what becoming a Linenite and like the desire that we have for other people is to come out of the system of the world that we were maybe born in that has indoctrinated us with lies. Like every time you walk down the aisle, I saw somebody posted something the other day that said, when I walk down the bread aisle, it's just like everything is screaming at me, you're all lies, full of lies. And it's true. My children now have an understanding, we've raised the standard of expectation for what food is. Like this is real food now to my children. But even just 6 months ago or 8 months ago, this wasn't. Like this wasn't even on our radar for food. Do you know what I mean by that? And if you start out feeding your children this kind of bread when they're young, that you set an expectation for them about what is reality that is so high when counterfeits come along, which is what the world is full of, right? Counterfeits, things that are astray from the truth, from the narrow path that we're supposed to be on, that's satanic. Like, think of if you've never been a shepherd, you won't get this analogy. But when I was a shepherd, goats make paths that are crazy and they make no sense because goats, a lot of times, are just going to wander around a field and eat all the tops of plants trying to find the best tasting thing. So they'll walk all over the place and leave this ridiculous path all over looking for just the best tasting stuff. They eat the top of the plants because that's the freshest, greenest stuff. And then they will eventually keep doing that same kind of pattern and path over and over and over again. Whereas a lot of times sheep and other animals, they kind of go in a line, a more straight line, like an ox or a buffalo. Like cattle and stuff, they will kind of drive together in a straight line. Goats are different. That's why they're satanic. Not goats, the animal, just the idea of things being astray. And that's what's happened in our society. They fed us a version of what bread is for all these generations that we now think is the standard. But now, when you suddenly change that and you eat fresh milled flour for the first time, it's different because you suddenly realize your body communicates with you, you've nourished me. Thank you for that. Same thing, though, with our clothing that we wear. And that's what we have found such a benefit and such a delight is that by just putting different garments on our bodies can feel nourished and satisfied because the skin organ gets neglected so much. And we haven't gone there yet, you guys, but we're going to soon. There's all these other levels to becoming a Linenite that we haven't even talked to you guys about. I've teased you just a little bit. Like getting in the water. I just can't say it enough. So many of you have never been in the water. I'm not trying to like dog on you if you haven't. I'm just trying to kick you right in the face with reality because the water was made to give. That's what it does. The sun freely gives its light. The water is also freely giving itself to the earth constantly. Like the springs of the earth are literally giving themselves up continually. And the Father has this wonderful desire for you guys to go and immerse yourself in the water. You know, there was this character that we read about in the scriptures called Yohanan the Baptist, right? How about we just talk about his story because it's so epic. Come on. He's called Yohanan the Immerser, not really John the Baptist. That's just kind of an Anglicized version of him. He didn't baptize people. He immersed them, or he was a witness to them as they were immersed. And it said he immersed with water and with repentance. He called the people to repent and to be immersed in water. And immersing yourself completely in water while wearing linen is one of the most epic things you can ever do in your life. And I did this at a conference in Atlanta over the summer, and it was incredible. I never got to be a part of full immersion while wearing linen until Chelsea and I went and did that in a river when we kind of recovenanted ourselves with each other and with the Father in this new walk that we'd been living in. And it is so powerful to go in the water with linen on. And I found a dude who wrote a book 130 years ago that basically talks about water as if you and I were talking about the most potent medicine that has ever existed on the face of the earth. And you know what's true is that Yeshua himself said, wash in the water of a spring called Gihon, and you would be healed, to a man who was blind from birth. And you know, that's the reality for most every single one of us. We were born blind from birth. And like our parents, they were blind. Our grandparents, blind. Great-great-grandparents, all blind. Every single one of us are blind, deaf, and dumb. But the good news is there's a cure, and it's hiding in the water. Check this out. Let's do it. Luke, chapter 1. All right, you ready for this? Since many, I'm reading from the Scriptures translation, so dive in, shall we? Since many have indeed taken in hand to set in order an account of the matters completely confirmed among us as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and servants of the word delivered to us, it seemed good to me as well, having followed up all these matters exactly from the beginning, to write to you an orderly account, most excellent Theophilus, that you might know the certainty of the words which you were taught. There was in the days of Herodes, the sovereign of Yahudah, a certain priest named Zechariah, of the division of Abiah, and his wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elisheba. And they were both righteous before Elohim, blamelessly walking in all the commands and righteousness of Yahuwah. And they had no child, because Elisheba was barren, and both were advanced in years. And it came to be that while he was serving as a priest before Elohim in the order of his division, according to the institute of the priesthood, he was chosen by lot to burn incense when he went into the dwelling place of Yahuwah. Okay, what that means is there was a priesthood of people that would go in to minister to Yahuwah. During specific times, generally twice a year, they would have, I believe it's 1 week interval that they would go and minister. And they would determine this by lot when it came to this encounter that he's about to do, which is super important. It only happens one day of the entire year, and all these people are there to witness because it's a huge deal, because the priest is going in to the holy places. Big deal going down here. Lots of people there to witness Zechariah and his moment. Like, most of the time, this is only going to happen one time in your life, if ever, as a priest. Check this out. And the entire crowd of people was praying outside at the hour of incense. And a messenger of Yahuwah appeared to him, standing on the right side of the slaughter place of incense. And when Zechariah saw him, he was troubled, and fear fell upon him. But the messenger, or angel, said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah, for your prayer is heard. And your wife Elisheba shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Yohanan. And you shall rejoice and have gladness, and many shall rejoice at his birth. For he shall be great before Yahuwah, and shall drink no wine and strong drink at all. And he shall be filled with the set-apart spirit, even from his mother's womb. And he shall turn many of the children of Yasharel to Yahuwah their Elohim. And he shall go before him in the spirit and power of Eliyahu, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the disobedient to the insight of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for Yahuwah." And Zechariah said to the messenger, "By what shall I know this? For I am old, and my wife advanced in years." And the messenger answering said to him, "I am Gabriel, who stands in the presence of Elohim, and was sent to speak to you and announce to you this good news. But see, you shall be silent and unable to speak until this day takes place, because you did not believe my words, which shall be filled in their appointed time." What that means is Zechariah, he became deaf and unable to speak because he doubted. He doubted in his mind, so he became deaf and unable to speak. It's not just that he was unable to speak. That's often commonly referred to. Other translations might render it dumb and unable to speak, but really he was deaf and unable to speak, which is why later in the story, he's going to ask for writing tablets after people make signs to him because he can't understand hearing. Okay, check this out. And the people waited for Zechariah and marveled at his delay in the dwelling place. And when he came out, he was unable to speak to them. And they recognized that he had seen a vision in the dwelling place. For he was beckoning to them and remained dumb, deaf. And it came to be, as soon as the days of his service were completed, he went away to his house. And after those days, his wife Elisheba conceived. And she hid herself 5 months, saying, "Yahuwah has done this for me, in the days when he looked upon me to take away my reproach among men." And in the 6th month, the messenger Gabriel, sent by Elohim to a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a maiden engaged to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David, and the maiden's name was Miriam. pause. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because that gets into Yeshua's story, which is awesome. If you haven't read Luke chapter 1 in the middle of the winter, I don't know why not. It's a perfect time to read it because it's glorious to rejoice at the wonders of freezing cold water outside. Yohanan the Immerser's coming out of the water that he is going to be conceived in. Yeshua's coming out of the water that he's conceived in. And every one of you needs to get in some cold water while you still can and change your life. Wear linen while you do it. Anyways, you ready for this? Okay. And Miriam arose. Okay, Miriam finds out she's going to have a baby too. Super bizarre because, she's not been with a dude or anything like that. And she's definitely kind of doubting, but not the same way. So because of that, the angel, Gabriel, tells her, you know what? To confirm that you're going to have a baby by the Holy Spirit, why don't you go ahead to your distant relative's house? This is Yochanan the Baptist's mom, Elsheba. You can go to her house and you're going to find an old woman who's pregnant, 6 months pregnant basically at this time. You're going to find her pregnant and that'll be confirmation to you that this baby is from me. And his name's going to be Yahusha, or Yah is salvation. That's going to be his name. He's going to just absolutely transform your life. So get ready for that. And Miriam arose in those days and went into the hill country with haste to a city of Yahudah and entered into the house of Zechariah and greeted Elsheba. And it came to be, when Elsheba heard the greeting of Miriam, that the baby leaped in her womb. And Elsheba was filled with the set-apart spirit and called out with a loud voice, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. And who am I that the mother of my master should come to me? For look, when the sound of your greeting came to my ears, the baby in my womb leaped for joy. Blessed is she who believed, for that which Yahuwah has said to her shall be accomplished." And Miriam said, "My being makes Yahuwah great, and my spirit has rejoiced in Elohim my Savior, because he looked on the humiliation of his female servant. For look, from now on all generations shall call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done wonders for me, and set apart is his name. And his compassion is from generation to those who fear him. He did mightily with his arm, and he scattered the proud in the thought of their hearts. He brought down rulers from their thrones and exalted the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good, and the rich he has sent away empty. He sustained Yasharel, his servant, in remembrance of his compassion, as he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham, and to his seed forever." And Miriam stayed with her about 3 months and returned to her home. And the time was filled. Just for a second, how awesome is it that Mary recognizes that it really is Yahuwah who has compassion on his people from generation to generation? If you make a decision for you and your family to regard things like living bread as valuable and clothing like this as valuable, it is going to impart on your family and the children's generations of expectations that are blessed by Yahuwah, because he created these things for our good and for our pleasure. Because you know what? Yah loves it when we delight in him. Like, have you not read Psalm 34? I did a video last time on that. Read Psalm 34, because he literally says, "Taste and see that I am good." Like, he wants us to eat good stuff, like the best stuff, like the choicest of fruits of the earth. Like, the wealth of our nation is in our food. It's really in our food, like silver and gold and copper and lead and bullets and missiles. Most of the world knows America, the United States of America, as a nation that exports violence, sex, and destruction. Like, these are the things that we export in unbelievable, powerful, incredible, gargantuan proportions. Like, we export entertainment, things for the eyes, and then things for destruction, because we are wholly embracing a covenant with the dragon of death. Like, we really have become ensnared by the dragon and been drawn in to do his desire. in a huge way in our nation. And I used to be wholly addicted to that kingdom. And I used to spend a lot of my life serving in that kingdom and laying down myself for that kingdom to build up and to get stronger and more robust all the time. But you know what? There's this huge, massive part of our country called the bread basket. Have you ever heard of it? The bread basket? It's supposed to be growing real grain. It's like almost perfectly designed to grow inordinate amounts of grain at any given time. The problem is most of that grain is literally death. Like they're growing death. They're spraying death on it to where every bit of the acreage that you see in these orchards and in these granaries is just full of death. Oh my gosh. Hang in there, y'all. You okay? I lost you. Sorry about it. Start talking about death and things happen. But it's an inordinate burden for our nation that we carry in so many ways because we have shared with this world a model of growing food in death and for exporting that to other nations. There's a lot of places all over the world, guys, that do not allow imports from the United States because our food is so corrupt. There's a lot of nations that literally make it illegal for you to send food from the United States over to them. Even countries that are starving, because it'd be better for the United States as a whole to go through massive scarcity of food. I really believe that. There's a lot of people that are talking about like, there's this guy out there who's buying up all the land and he's a bad dude. And it's so bad to hear that. Have you ever heard the Psalms that says, fret not because of the way of the wicked? Like, do not be afraid of the bad guys. Do you understand? They're the agents of evil. They're not who we fear. Like if you have fear about what tomorrow's going to bring or what the tyrants of our nation or the Nephil, the tyrants, the mighty ones of our nation or the people around the world, like the bad guys everyone points fingers at and says, they're the worst reason. They're the reason all this stuff's happening. No, it's not. It's because we threw him and his words out as something that didn't matter and were not valuable. So because of that, he raises up tyrants. Do you understand? Yahweh raised up Nebuchadnezzar. Yahweh raised up Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, as a tool in his hand to judge the people so that the people, when they're being punched in the face, would suddenly realize, wow, I've gone super far astray. Because you ever had a child that wouldn't learn when you gave them words and you had to just almost pray that the father would just teach them the lesson because they won't listen to you? Yahweh raises up the tyrants, you guys. You got to understand that. Just as much as he can raise up a deliverer in one day, he can raise up the tyrant to oppress you your whole life if you disregard him. He loves us. He cares about us, and he wants us to care about what he has to say more than we think about what our enemies are doing and what they have to say. Yohanan, the immerser, is literally about to be born in blood and water. Every child that enters this world goes through blood and water to get out and to get into this world. So he's going to go through that. I was trying to say here that Mary understood that Yahweh will fill the hungry with good. And if we suffered from hunger in this nation, if we suffered from famine, the people would come to learn that Yahweh will feed his people always. He will also clothe them. He will also shelter them. He promised to do that, and he can do that in a desert where there's nothing there growing. He can literally create bread from heaven, which falls out of the sky to feed you, to clothe you, to nourish you and sustain you, and water you out of the dust of the earth and the stones that cry out to him. He can give you anything you need. It would be better for our nation to suffer famine from the food that is poisoned, so that we could turn and find the food of the bread of life. The Father has that waiting for us. Now, let's go on, shall we? And the time was filled for Elisheba to give birth, and she bore a son. And her neighbors and relatives heard how Yahuwah had shown great compassion to her, and they rejoiced with her. And it came to be, on the 8th day that they came to circumcise the child, and they were calling him by the name of his father, Zechariah. And his mother answering said, not so, but he shall be called Yohanan. And they said to her, there is no one among your relatives who is called by this name. Then they made signs to his father. What would he like to the child be called? And having asked for a writing tablet, he wrote, saying, Yohanan is his name. And they all marveled. And at once his mouth was open and his tongue loosed, and he was speaking, praising Elohim. And fear came on all those dwelling around them, and all these matters were spoken of him in the hill country of Yahudah. And all who heard them kept them in their hearts, saying, What then shall this child be? And the hand of Yahuwah was with him. And Zechariah, his father, was filled with the set-apart spirit, and he prophesied, saying, Blessed be Yahuwah, the Elohim of Yasharel, for he did look upon and worked redemption for his people, and has raised up a horn of deliverance for us in the house of his servant David, as he spoke by the mouth of his set-apart prophets from of old, deliverance from our enemies and from the hand of all those hating us, to show compassion towards our fathers, and to remember his set-apart covenant, an oath which he swore to our father Abraham, to give to us, being delivered from the hand of our enemies, to serve him without fear, in set-apartness and righteousness before him all the days of our life. And this is what he spoke to his son. Pay attention here. His son is 8 days old, and Zechariah is going to prophesy words over his son that will ring forth the rest of his life. But hear me, Zechariah's son is not going to grow up with Zechariah's words in his ears. Zechariah will not hear the words of his father spoken over him, because Zechariah is going to be murdered. He is going to suffer the blood of his body to be spilled out to fertilize the temple for his master's deliverance to come with. Yeshua himself is going to speak out condemnation against those people who raised up a sword and slaughtered Zechariah, this man, for the son that came from his loins. When King Herod went to murder all the babies who were born that they thought might become king in Bethlehem, Zechariah's son was number one most wanted on that kill list, because everybody knew, did you hear it? Everybody knew about this kid's birth. Everybody knew about this baby that was born to Zechariah. The whole hillside knew about it. So when King Herod found out that there's a king born to the Yahudim, Yochanan the Baptist, Yochanan the Immerser, is number one on his kill list. And so basically, in order to try to find out where Yochanan was, they killed Zechariah in the act of trying to find him. The last thing his dad did was lay down and give up his life in order to protect his son from being murdered. Awesome. But these words are going to be the most powerful thing that will resonate in his son's life for the rest of it. And I hope each of you would consider heavily the power of your words and speaking to the people that are around you. You can speak so much life into the people around you with your words. And you know what? That is a powerful tool in your hands, and I hope you wield it carefully and strategically, even against your enemies, that you would speak blessings over your enemies, that you would not wield up the sword that is in your tongue to cut down your enemies, but instead that you would seek ways that you could bless them and do good to them. Because you know what can happen? In a single day, that very enemy, the very agent of evil that everyone's turning and looking at and pointing at as the bad guy, in a single day, that person can be cut to the heart. Like Stephen in Acts, when he spoke to these people, he cut to their heart. Yahuwah has this miraculous ability to use his living word to cut people open, to pierce through their soul, and to give them the life that they needed to resurrect the dead man and draw out the salvation that was waiting for them. And that person can then wield the influence that they have to save nations, to save people all over the face of the earth. Don't forget that. Literally, Joseph is in prison till the day Pharaoh lifts him up out of it. And they store up grain for 14 years of crazy times that were coming. Shall we go on? This is what Yochanan's prophecy is spoken over as his life is. You ready for this? And you, child, shall be called prophet of the Most High, for you shall go before the face of Yahuwah to prepare his ways, to give knowledge of deliverance to his people by the forgiveness of their sins, through the tender compassion of our Elohim, with which the daybreak from on high has looked upon us, to give light to those who sit in darkness and the shadow of death, to guide our feet in the way of shalom. And the child grew and became strong in spirit and was in the deserts until the day of showing himself openly to Yasharel. Yohanan the Immerser grew up in a set-apart place as a nomad of Yahweh. He was one of those strange, peculiar people that lived out in the fringes of society because he was being hunted for the way he chose to live, by the fact that he did live. And some of our children today, some of the men and the women, the grandmothers and the grandfathers are going to be hunted strategically by radically intelligent, evil, spiritual powers influencing the minds and the wills and the souls of men, women, and children all over the earth. And it's been happening since the beginning, you guys. And it's going to happen continually until our Messiah hears our cries and comes with furious wrath to deliver us, by the way, clothed in linen, to deliver his people from all of the hands of our oppressors in a single moment of time. So I pray you guys would be seriously considerate of the wonders that you have been entrusted in this life. If you have the opportunity to give somebody the bread of life this day, that's why you're here. There's no greater reason in your whole life for you to exist. You read Psalm 39 recently? Hold on. Our lives are so short, you guys. And you have an opportunity to bear witness, to feed somebody the bread of life. And I do mean this too, barley. Give them the bread of life. Give them some radio protection from all the nightmares that are going on around them. But you could also save them from the snare of the devil. Check this out. Let me know. This is David, by the way, crying out. He said, Yahuwah, let me know my end and the measure of my days, what it is. Let me know how short-lived I am. See, you have made my days as handbreadths. It's the width of your hand. And my lifetime is as non-existence before you. Only all men are standing. All are a breath. Selah. As but a shadow each one walks, they busy themselves only in vain, and they heap up wealth, but know not who gathers it. And now, Yahuwah, what do I wait for? My expectancy is in you. So deliver me from all my transgressions, and do not make me the reproach of the foolish. For I was dumb, and I did not open my mouth, because it was you who did it. So turn aside your stroke from me. I am overcome by the blow of your hand. For when you chastise man for crookedness with reproofs, you consume what he loves like a moth. All men are but a breath, Selah. Hear my prayer, O Yahuwah, and give ear to my cry. Do not be silent at my tears, for I am a stranger with you, a sojourner, as all my fathers were. So look away from me, that I might brighten up before I go away and end no more. All of you who are sojourners out there, whether you physically travel around on the road, or whether you physically, mentally, and emotionally become a sojourner to the systems of Babylon and Egypt that you are raised in, I pray that the Father would nourish you, clothe you, and give you the bread of life this day, and that he would encourage you to live dangerously for him and for his ways, and that you would love your neighbors, even if they're your enemies, you guys, that you would love them, because we have been walking in the shadow of death all of our lives. All of us have lived under the shadow of death. But you know what? Yahweh's people were there to bring light to those who sat in darkness. That is why Yohanan the Immerser came into the earth. That is why the light of the world was born, because he could shine a light on dead men's hearts and give them hope and courage and restoration, that he will sustain us and nourish us and provide for us everything we need along the way. I hope you would be courageous to do so and to give people the bread of life, the bread of the earth, and the fabrics of his kingdom. I love you. I will talk to you soon.